What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 319.
Whoa.
Check that math. That's right? 319.
Yeah.
All right, cool. My name's Steve. I'm here as always. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. And with me also is
Ronald
and John.
Guys, how are you doing? How's it going over there? I mean, you look good, but how are you feeling?
Excited.
Good.
Okay,
Excited.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about this week, man. Like, I think it's just it's exciting week for movies. It's feeling like we're heating up.
I think we have, even though we had fun doing it, I think we are glad to be on the other side of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
So happy.
We had, but I mean, those are good episodes. And if anyone has not heard them, go back. And we just released the last one last week, but we did a Watch 'Em All series where we watched all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. But I think that now that we're back in this kind of free zone of there's nothing we really have to squeeze in right now that we've promised. I don't think. We did suggest we'd talk about the new James Bond movie at some point, and I guess we shall at some point. But other than that, we haven't promised anything to people,
right?
That we haven't delivered, and so now we're kind of in this it's like the beginning of a new season of Movie Schmovie.
Right.
It feels like it's okay to wear my sweatpants right now. It's kind of that vibe,
yeah.
Which is been the last 18 months. Don't get me wrong, but even more so after 318.
Even more so. I get that. I actually, speaking of Freddie. Before I ask you how your life is going, Steve, I grabbed Freddy's Nightmares, a TV show from 1988. I have them on my server, so if you guys want to check it out. I watched the pilot.
If you for one second think that I did not already see that and have watched about a half a dozen of them, you do not know me, friend.
How do you feel about the pilot episode where they try to explain the backstory of?
Man. They're so bad. I mean, like some of them are fun and good and just interesting. I remember a lot of them from like being younger, but
you gotta watch the pilot. It's
pilot's pretty rough.
It's dragged out. It could be 20 good minutes. Instead, it's 45 excruciating minutes of just like long
and directed by Toby Hooper. I don't. Not many people even catch that. I don't think, but yeah, I mean, like. I was reminded when I saw the credits opening, but there you go.
I mean, his track record is all over the place, I guess.
It's spotty.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I did see that. So, and I like to think that part of that was you did that for me, and I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. I thought about you. I was like, you guys would appreciate this.
I thought about it just in terms of if we wanted to do like a follow-up at some point, what other Nightmare on Elm Street material was out there. And I was kind of eyeing that. I was like, well, maybe something on the road.
It's a weird collection of things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I heard that you went on a amazing trip, Steve.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about where you were.
Yeah, man. It was we got to go back to do our annual thing. We go down to Universal Orlando every fall for their Halloween Horror Nights event, which is like just basically them flipping the park into like a Halloween haunted attraction. So they use all the back lots. And some of the attraction lots to do basic, theming for different haunted houses. This year they had 10 houses. It was 30th anniversary. They do like a mix of original houses and, IP, depending on what year it is. This year there were only a couple of the IPs. Like they had Beetlejuice was a house and The Haunting of Hill House and Texas Chainsaw. So yeah, speaking of Toby Hooper. Basically we go every year, my wife and I and our two closest friends, and just it's like a little adults weekend, and we just kind of do Disney while we're down there if we have time. But yeah, we didn't get to go last year for obvious reasons, and we were very questioning whether we were going to go this year or not. But down to literally the last few days before leaving, before we finally booked everything, mainly because of all the COVID numbers spiking. And surprisingly, I mean, I got to give Florida some credit because somehow they've got their numbers on par with, and in some metrics lower than where we are in Maryland. And Maryland's kind of one of the benchmark states. But yeah, man, it was great. I mean, we were very anxious, and Aaron and I have been very, cautious and very selective about what we've done this entire time, but we felt comfortable doing it. And and I was surprised how many people, maybe it's because it's people coming from all over to these events, how many people were still masking up. In certain areas, they were still required, like indoor spaces at different parks, it was still required, which was good. And even just like people in general seem like a lot more than I expected, I guess. Maybe I'm just not giving people enough credit, but they were wearing it more than I thought they would, and that was reassuring. But um, it's mostly an outdoor event, and anything inside was masked, and if we were uncomfortable, and we just wore a mask, like just to be more comfortable. I mean, we wear a mask still here in Maryland for pretty much everything we do because we have small kids, and my daughter is kind of like solidarity, to wear it with her because she's not vaccinated. But it was really fun, man. I got to be honest. Selfishly, it was like great to just kind of get away and do something that we haven't been able to do in almost 2 years. And well, actually, yeah, this event was 2 years ago that we last went. But
yeah,
it's just an amazing event. I mean, I feel like I've said it on the podcast before, but if you're like a horror aficionado or just movies in general, just the idea of what they do at that park, in terms of on a nightly basis being able to flip it over into this horror land of just crazy awesome special effects and practical things and makeup, and it's just awesome. It goes from like 6 o'clock to 2 a.m. and some of the ride attractions are open still, so you can still ride some of those things in the Universal Park, outside of the haunted houses. But for the most part, people are kind of doing the houses. Yeah, I don't know. It was great. Honestly, it was just, and we did go to Disney as well. And we went to Islands Adventure, which is like the sister park to Universal. It was a jam-packed 3 days, and I'm still feeling it coming home. Like my body is not the body it used to be, especially after doing nothing for the last year and a half. But
did you get on a Star Trek ride?
Star Trek ride
Star
is not
Wars
at those
ride.
parks.
I'm so sorry. The Star Wars ride.
Yeah. So I've ridden the newest Star Wars ride. The last time we were there, the Rise of the Resistance, and that's amazing. This year we didn't ride that day we were there. It was the wait was way too long. It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. But we did ride the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which is also a really cool ride. Which I've ridden before, but we rode it again because the wait wasn't that bad. But yeah, man, those parks are just amazing to me. And I'm not a coaster person at all, but I made a vow to our friend Lauren, that I would ride the new Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure with her, and immediately regretted it when it took off, and still kind of shaken from that experience.
Do we by any chance have one of those photos? The
it's
sickly
funny.
face.
There is a photo, and it's funny. We just realized that when we got on the plane, when we flew back, like we got the card to be able to buy the photo at the end of the day, so we didn't have to carry it around and basically probably destroy it.
Right.
And like we all forgot about it. And I actually sent a message to the guest services, like, is there a chance that photo is still available to buy like digitally or something? Because I completely forgot that I was supposed to go back and buy it. But yeah, it's a great photo. And if I get a hold of it, I'll for sure send it to you guys. It's pure fear. Well,
I wanted to ask, because this is sort of one of our this is an October episode, and we're doing a little bit of horror in this episode anyway. So, and we're kind of keeping that theme rolling, even though we're out of the swamp of Freddy. What was the best of those, like the scary movie? You mentioned Hill House. I mean, there's different things that I would love to hear how they pulled it off, but what was your favorite attraction in that sense of the horror movie aspect?
It probably was Hill House. I mean, the Beetlejuice house is really cool to see. I mean, it's not like really I was like very apprehensive about that because it's not like really a scary movie. It does lend itself to some really cool like set pieces, and like what they did in that house was really cool to kind of like basically walk through the story of the movie Beetlejuice, and that looked really cool. Wasn't really a good haunted house. Hill House was really cool though, because like they were able to pull a lot of the iconography and some scenes from the series, and we all like that's one of my favorite shows ever. And it's just really cool to see some of that imagery, like the tall man and the bent neck lady and things like that. And we all wear matching shirts when we go. So we had a Come Home Nell shirt that we had made that we were all wearing. So like we were all obviously jazzed for that house, and it definitely was worth it. It delivered.
Nerds! I love
it.
It's awesome.
But that house, I mean, and of the original houses, there was I'm kind of hit or miss on them because some of them just feel kind of generic to me, but they had like a really pretty impressive one. It was like the Bride of Frankenstein or the Bride of Frankenstein Returns or something like that. That was one of the first houses we did, and we were like really surprised how good that house was. It had some really good scares, and what, like I mentioned, it was the 30th anniversary of the event. So they had a house called it was like the Icons house, where they basically had all of the different icon. Like, so every year they have like an icon that is like the host of Halloween Horror Nights. It's like a clown, or it's like a murderous director, or it's like, whatever it might be. But basically the house was like just basically all those icons thrown into a house, and scaring you at basically every corner. So you had seen all these people over the years that we've been going for like the past 10 years or so. And that was a cool house too, just because you got to kind of see all of these faces that you remember. And it was kind of cool how they kind of worked them all in together, and they definitely put a lot of money into that house because it looked amazing. And that's like their original stuff. So like, that's kind of what they pride themselves on. But yeah, I don't know, that those three kind of stood out to me just because of Hill House being obviously like a favorite of mine. But those two original houses were also pretty cool. I mean, the Texas Chainsaw House was fun. I mean, we've seen that before there, and it's just kind of like it feels a little bit like a one trick thing. Like, you hear the chainsaw rev up and you see it so many times. It's like, it's cool to look at, but it's like, it's not really that scary. But yeah, I don't know. So I'd probably say those.
Do they do the sliding door of the chainsaw house?
Yeah, they have that.
Yeah,
like, and that's cool. I mean, like, that's like we talked about before, like the Freddy house. They've had like a Halloween and Friday 13th. Like, they hit the right notes with all these things. And some of those houses really are more impressive than they are scary, or even just like moderately entertaining, like seeing the puppet scene from Nightmare 3 or whatever. Like, those reenactments and how they really dress those sets up are just more impressive than scary. It's just like, wow, like I'm looking at something that is like an iconic thing in horror movie history to me, but I'm like standing inside of it. And that's like really what some of the wow factor is. But it's an amazing event. I mean, if
I've
I don't know,
almost gone to one, man. I've almost gone to one.
I feel like your brain would explode. I mean, like, I know you're like not the biggest horror person, but I mean, like, just the vibe of the event is so cool. And it's like, they have like scare zones along the street. So like, even when you're outside of the houses, like there are like actors like trying to scare you on the street, and like as you're walking around the park. And that's really just kind of to keep that ambiance up and kind of make you feel uncomfortable, I guess. But it's a really fun event. I mean, it's not cheap, and it's an expensive trip that we definitely treat ourselves to, but it's amazing. And I mean, as long as we can go every year, we probably will keep going. I mean, I feel like this year was a little interesting because I feel like they didn't do it last year because of COVID at all. And it seemed like they kind of played it safe in some ways in terms of like not going out and getting a lot of those like brand name houses, because usually it's about half and half. But this year there were only 3. So I feel like the attendance was really good. And I think they realized people were still going to come out for it if it was open and safe, and they were doing what they could to make sure people were safe. So I'm hoping that if it, next year comes around, there's so many things that I would love to see houses. Like, I can't believe they haven't done like an It house or a Scream house or things like that just seem just like prime for the making. And maybe like once they kind of get rolling again and get some of those bigger names again, it would be awesome to see some of those things that they haven't done yet. So hopefully that comes in the next couple of years. So yeah, man, it was an awesome trip. Yeah, Halloween Horror Nights. They do it in Orlando and Hollywood. So if anybody is listening in any of those areas or traveling or anything like that, looking for something to do, it's an amazing. If you like the haunts, it's like the event to go to for sure. And yeah, so that was that trip, and it was great. Thanks for asking.
I wonder if we have any listeners in Orlando or even Florida. If you're listening and you're in Florida, hit us up. Let us know. Yeah, I'm curious. I guess California as well, but I feel like I know a couple people that might listen that are industry or not, that work at some level of the industry.
Yeah.
Like friends. I'm sure you have that same thing. Friends in the biz you get the impression they check it out occasionally. But I think most people that work in the industry probably are like, I don't need to listen to these yabos. Actually have connections.
These guys.
But let's talk about a big event. Industry kind of thing. The FanDome DC event was this past weekend, and there was a slow trickle of just information and footage, and a bunch of projects that have been talked about for a long time. that we haven't seen much footage from or none at all. Suddenly there was some imagery and some hype. So I don't know, just in short, I know, Ronald, you were watching it live and you were commenting on the experience of that. What was your take on that, and just the kind of offerings that DC is got that they have on their slate?
Yeah, Deadline just reported that the event had 66 million views, global views, and the energy surrounding it you could feel it. Just seeing people talk about it. It's not as. It's cool to have something that's remote that we can all watch at the same time. Everybody's seeing the trailers at the same time and stuff like that. Obviously, Batman seemed to be the one that everybody was kind of clamoring over, just because it had been a year since we'd seen anything. I'd say Flash was a close second. The set kind of update on Aquaman 2 seemed to be a pretty big deal. And the little clip that they had of Black Adam. I mean, I didn't know that they had filmed at least a scene in a cave. I mean, that's it essentially was. But
I love that standard of like, quick question about your film. Have you filmed at least a scene in a cave yet?
Yeah.
No? Okay, no. No, but I do think that like the imagery, seeing something from that, getting a sense of the tone of what it's going to be, I still feel like this movie exists because of The Rock as like a walking hype machine, and the way he talks about it as though it's this crazy new thing you've never seen before. I'm really not sold, or not sold. I just mean, I still don't get it. I still don't get what the hype is. But what's funny is I was thinking that after seeing the presentation, at the end, the footage looked all right, fine, looked kind of cool. But then after that, I saw like a headline that was like, Black Adam could beat Superman, says Dwayne Johnson. I was like, this guy just won't.
He's just saying anything.
Black Adam.
He's so hype about it. Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like
is there a there? Do you think, or is it just that he's the hero in a movie and he's hyping it? I don't know. Is this character going to be some crazy new thing we haven't seen before?
It might be.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
It may be. I think that what they're going to do is probably root some of Black Adam in some of The Rock's roots, which seems to be a thing that he does, the fusion of, his Samoan background with his characters. And if they do something like that, sure, that'll be something we've never seen before. But in terms of like just lightning coming out of his hands and stuff like that, we've seen that, right? Yes. And
he's a bad guy, maybe, but he's a good guy. I mean, I think there's a few things going on there that might make it an interesting thing. But it's just funny. But yeah,
and Shazam,
cool and the connection to Shazam.
Which
but
feels like Shazam.
A lot of people would have thought that he would have been introduced as a villain in the Shazam movie and then spun off, but they're doing it the other way.
Yeah.
But some of the other characters that we're getting in this, like Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, different things like that are encouraging, because it's that kind of thing where, you hear about it with Marvel stuff all the time, where they start mentioning like who's in the supporting cast of a movie, right, and you realize, they're doing more than just introducing the title character to viewers. And I don't know. I feel like I don't have any opinion whatsoever about the creative team behind Black Adam. So I have no knowledge. The trailer looked like it, or the teaser looked like a teaser. And Dwayne Johnson is Dwayne Johnson, so he'll either buy him or you won't. But you know what you're going to get. I don't think he's going to totally surprise us just because he's going to be making mean faces or anything.
Yeah. One of the things that's surprising about The Rock is like, really, you don't have to imagine that he can beat people's asses. Like with Batista and The Rock, you never have to imagine like, oh man, if this is obviously a play on this, they're adding some level of he's a monster. He can beat the hell out of people, and so can Batista. So seeing them in things in a suit that doesn't really add any muscle to them, it's just a suit fitting his body. It's pretty cool. So like, I mean, sure, that's something I've never seen before. I've never seen him and Henry Cavill are the only men I've ever seen that just like, they don't have to add anything to the suit. No muscles, no nothing. They're just dangerously big people who are just
Henry
walking
Cavill's
around.
one of those guys who turns to the side and he's just as deep as he is wide, he's just. Yeah.
By the way, Man of Steel, I have to say this, man, one of the most underrated superhero movies in the past 20 years. I've rewatched it a couple of times since it first came out, and it's still sure it was dark and weird and had some weird ending and some tonal stuff, but I love that movie, man.
I mean, I remember thinking it was kind of misunderstood and underrated, I guess would be a fair way to say it. I think that it's weird that they never did get to come back and do the full on Superman movie. I mean, again, that's people have commented on that, but it's just kind of like Ben Affleck didn't get to do a straight Batman movie. Henry Cavill didn't really get to do a straight Superman movie either, you know. And I don't mean straight by not, I mean fully within the Snyderverse. I think that they still should have gotten their solo adventure, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, let's talk about some of these other trailers. We mentioned The Flash. I'll just say it. I got more juice out of hearing Michael Keaton's voice and seeing a silhouette of that Batman than I did out of the new Batman looks cool, but it doesn't feel new to me yet. What feels new about new Batman is Matt Reeves directing. I mean, the team, the people involved. I have reason to believe there's going to be some cool performances in this movie, but the trailers are selling me something that really feels like this could be the next Christopher Nolan. It doesn't feel like a totally different take than what we've seen before. So as cool as the Batman looks, it didn't make me as giddy as hearing Michael Keaton's voice and the implied storyline that's going on in that movie of, you know, multiple versions of a character, or even if we only get one version, if it's just old Batman played by Michael Keaton. We have never gotten old Batman before, and Michael Keaton, this is enough of a deal that I think that, like, you know, the guy's up for Oscars now, so it's like they're not going to throw a shitty cameo at him. They're going to make use out of that, and the trailer looks like something. So I don't know, that excited me. I thought the Flash looked kind of interesting.
So I just want to say, poor Ezra Miller. That's all I kept thinking about watching that trailer.
Oh, he's in it too.
Because it's like, you know, if you read all the production stuff on the Flash, which actually just finished filming like this week, like you have Michael Keaton coming back as Batman, which is like John said, yes, in that teaser, it's the takeaway for me too. Like hearing his voice, seeing the cowl, you know, him pulling the drape off of the old Batmobile and hearing him say, "Holy," cut to credits. And like, that's literally what I said out loud in life, watching that trailer. And it looks cool. I'm sure it's going to be a fun movie. But I mean, for Ezra Miller, who's like kind of one of the ones that has like kind of stuck around through this Snyder of it all. And, you know, is you know, it kind of, he never got the standalone that, you know, people had been expecting, and it had kind of got delayed, lost a director, got a director, lost, you know, and now this movie's here. And everything that people are talking about is everything but him. And it's like, you know, you have Keaton and Affleck is in it as well, like as his Batman. And you know, there's who Supergirl or one of the other, Supergirl or back somebody else is going to be in this that like they were talking about at the FanDome. I can't remember which one it was.
I don't know if it's Supergirl or if it's another Kryptonian, but yes, there's another character that it might be a version of Supergirl. It might, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
but because Henry was talking about one of the other characters that he knows.
Yeah, I saw it in one of the press things. I can't remember who it was, but it was basically talking like a similar thing, and that there's rumors that like one of the one female person that was like with Zod in Man of Steel that kind of got banished, like she's apparently going to be in the movie. And like it's just all this stuff, like that's a lot of stuff for a movie that is supposed to be a Flash movie, which is definitely going to be a Flash movie because it seems like that's kind of like what allows all these characters to be in the movie, you know, what he can do. But it is a little worrisome that, like, you know, a lot of the shock and awe is around the fact that Keaton is in the movie. And, you know, if the rumors are true, the idea is that, like, you know, he's kind of going to be like a Nick Fury type character that kind of sees through and pops up possibly throughout Nick Fury, or even like Iron Man was the Spider-Man, like something like an elder kind of who just kind of pops up from here and there as a mentor or as a guide. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, like the Keaton of it all, I mean, they've done a really good job of kind of being hush hush about it. And, you know, and even what you see is just a voice and a silhouette. But it's going to be pretty fantastic to see him in the Batman suit again. And it's going to be like a very exciting moment for a lot of people of a certain age, for sure. So,
well, Steve, another thing I wanted to comment on, because, you know, the marketing, this is a tease. This isn't even really a tease. This is like a whatever you call it when they have these I was going to say festival, but it's not the right word for when they have these like events, these media events. It's like designed for shareholders or something, and it's designed to get people. So I almost feel like you could almost argue that this Flash teaser exists to say, yes, Michael Keaton, like,
yeah, true.
You know what I mean? It's almost like, now let's stop treating that as the rumor. Let's stop treating that as the thing. It's almost like, get that out of the way so that we can talk about next time you're hearing about this movie. You're not going to be figuring out whether Michael Keaton is in it. You're going to be
Right.
finding out more about the movie. So in a way, I felt like by absolutely confirming that Michael Keaton is in this movie and he's playing some version of Batman, then they can say like, okay, now we have all these other secrets and storyline things you don't know anything about, that we haven't revealed anything. So in a weird way, it's almost like, it's like a little bit of like, let's go ahead and reveal something that people already know, and people will get excited about having it confirmed. And yes, all the other stuff they have planned for the movie, we don't really know how the character fits in. I mean, so I think it feels like a very calculated move. So maybe by the time this movie's actually being marketed as this movie, we won't be wondering what's Ezra Miller's role in this. We'll see a little bit more of it. Because I do like the idea of when he says, "Are you in?" I do think that implies a kind of rollicking adventure that you can kind of start to
like
imagine.
a team up,
right. That now we know what the mission is. Are you going to help us? And that feels almost, that James Gunn can get juice out of a moment like that, where it's like, look at this odd assortment of characters that we have, or these characters are working together, but they hate each other, or what. So I don't know. There's some fun to be had there. But I do agree with you that it's like, this is if comic fans know, this is like the Flashpoint storyline that's the basis of this. That's a reality breaking storyline. It's interesting that this movie is being called The Flash. It's just one of those odd little quirks of the way these movies get made. It's like, we're calling it The Flash, but the actual story that it has is like not like a basement level or ground floor level Flash story at all. This is a sort of redefining Flash, redefining the DC universe. A story that would have maybe made more sense as a movie if we had this steady flow of all this DC extended universe connected storytelling. But the DC hasn't really done that, so they don't really have a status quo to break with this movie. I just think that sounds kind of funny. But I did think that looked good. What did you guys think? I already said what I think of the Batman trailer. It looks really solid. What did you think of that? The finally getting like an extended look at the world of this movie and kind of the tone of it.
I'm ready. I think what I was really looking forward to is like the extent of Batman's detective work being expanded beyond, man, somebody used fear gas. It must be, you know what I mean? Like,
I hope that's in the movie. That's definitely not in the trailer.
If it's being sold to us, that the directors kind of said constantly.
Yeah, I hope that's not just what they always say.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. And if it really is Batman doing detective work, going around kicking ass, asking questions, getting leads, that'd be pretty cool. It feels like this Seven sort of, I don't know, man. It feels like this psycho going around murdering people, and this like man that happens to have a uniform going around in this interesting version of Gotham that seems sadder than the 1989 version of Gotham. Like it's like
so dark,
darkest.
I don't know that I need it. I don't know that I need it to always look so dark. But give me some sunlight. Seven is a good comparison. It feels like it's in that world of like dreariness, and I guess you just have to do the voice. Anybody who puts on the cowl, they have to talk like this. There's just we're gonna get some version of that.
And then you got the best barista ever, the Riddler, who fucking puts the cool little question the best barista ever. He does it while he's like just like leaning into his. Okay,
that's Paul Dano, right?
Yeah, Paul Dano is gonna.
Did you notice that even like the detailing on this was one of my favorite things about the trailer was that the coffee cup has like bright green detailing on it that the light really catches, and I really like that, partially because it's the only color in the entire trailer. So maybe I am again. I have a feeling the movie will have more fun, kind of this new version of Gotham, like you said, a noir feeling detective story. I have a feeling that might come off more in the movie. I think the trailer just feels like it feels like it's designed to sell. Hey, look, there's a new Batman, and I do think that the silhouette looks pretty cool. Like Robert Pattinson has a good build for this version of this character. But yeah, I'm waiting to see a little bit more that doesn't just look like explosions at night and fire and shadows. I mean, I know that that's part of the look and feel of a Batman movie, but I kind of want to see, I do kind of want to see what the rest of the world looks like. And
Steve, what do you think?
but Matt Reeves, I'm so excited because of him. I think he's the main reason why I'm buying into this, despite the trailer looking kind of familiar to me.
No, I mean, like I'm all in on this, man. Like the whole idea of like, people's response to Pattinson being Batman, and there's a lot of negativity around it when it was first announced. I'm just like, I've given up with any kind of like initial feelings about casting like that, because I just like learned to trust the process, and I'm just like, people feel that way about any kind of thing that's outside of the box, with casting or whatever it is in life. But I mean, mainly with movies, it's like, I always just the benchmark for me is always like people and then what they felt about Heath Ledger being the Joker. It's like, you just really never know what it's going to look like on the screen. And so, but that said, I think, the little bits that we've seen of him, I am very interested to see what his Batman is like and what his Bruce Wayne is like. I really like what kind of actor he's become in the last 10 years, post Twilight. He's really interesting, and he's got a really interesting take on all the characters I've seen him in recently, in movies recently. But I mean, the big thing for me really is the Matt Reeves of it all. I really do love Matt Reeves, and I don't think he's really made a bad movie. I could probably be wrong here, but even things that he's been involved in from a producing and a writing standpoint, he's one of the better and more consistent directors working today, especially in the genre space that we like to watch. Whether it was like, the Cloverfield or, Let the Right One In, or, any of the Apes trilogy, all these things that like I really are movies that stand out to me. And to know, that, he has such a connection to this story that he's been wanting to tell of Batman. It seems that, he's definitely made a tone. And I mean, you can talk about Christopher Nolan or The Darkness and anything like that. Like, it just doesn't really faze me at all anymore. And I kind of respond pretty positively to that in general, in these kinds of movies. And your comparison to Seven, Ronald, is like spot on.
Yeah.
And, even hearing him compare it to Seven in an interview is like just music to my ears, I think, just in terms of tone and the people that are involved in it. The cast looks amazing. Andy Serkis, and just to think even that's Colin Farrell in that penguin outfit or that makeup is just completely insane.
I almost wonder why cast him to do that, but I guess when you're just that kind of an actor, it's like you get to do a crazy character turn. I guess Danny DeVito, right? It's like the equivalent of Danny DeVito being in a crazy makeup. It's just, let's do something wild with this character. Yeah. But Andy Serkis looks great in the trailer.
And you don't want Colin Farrell to look like Colin Farrell. Like you want him to look different, I guess. But that's pretty extreme. But he's also like, I think Colin Farrell is like a great actor.
Oh, he's fantastic. So
yeah, I can't wait. And in the interviews that he's been doing for some other movies he's been in recently, he constantly is talking about the Batman, and like it's so excited for people to see what that character looks like and does in the movie. Because apparently he's not like a major character in the movie, but he's in it for a decent chunk. But I don't know, man. I'm just very excited to see it. I love the way it looks. I love Paul Dano. I love just the idea of the Riddler being a major force in the Batman universe again. And that sequence with I like the muscle car look of the Batmobile.
Yeah.
And the sequence where he's like chasing the big explosion at the end that you referenced, John. It's like the chase with the Penguin in the car when he's like, I got you, and he comes flying through the fire and flips the car over. Like, I love that perspective shot of the car flipping and the camera's kind of rolling over, and the shot upside down of him walking in the fire. I mean, it's fucking epic. Like, it looks awesome.
It does.
Yeah, and using that as like the hero shot of the trailer, the upside down with the logo coming in, and the music
comes in and frames them out.
Yeah, so it does feel really like. But that at that moment, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see people just, again, you don't have to work that hard to get people excited about Batman, I don't think. True. But all you have to do is have like a cool looking Batman trailer, and people will probably go, oh, I'll go see that new Batman movie. He's one of the few superheroes that works that way, I think.
Definitely.
And the Alfred that looks like he can beat your ass.
That's what I'm saying. Andy Serkis, I really like. He's got like a line and a half in the trailer, and he sold me on that character. He's kind of underrated, I think.
Oh man. Yeah, he is.
He's great. Maybe really not. He's successful and everybody loves him. But you know what I mean? I feel like people don't really talk about well, maybe that's all people talk about with him, but it is amazing his level of commitment and just how serious he is about it. But like when you could tell he had fun playing Claw in the Black Panther and Age of Ultron, and I think looks like he would be having fun doing this. And you're right, Ronald. Yeah, like a scrappier version of Alfred is fun to see too. And the new version of Alfred in the comics is basically like the ultimate badass. I know that he's been that for a while, but I mean, they've just gone ahead and said, oh, he has all this crazy training and he's this, which is cool. But I still have in my head that he should be a butler first. But I think he was like an MI6 guy, first.
That's really cool.
But at any rate, yeah. So at this point, I mean, honestly, I think the whole DC versus Marvel thing can kind of just go take a hike, right? I mean, DC has a bunch of projects that look cool, including Peacemaker, which looks like a lot of fun.
Great trailer.
And it looks like James Gunn has a TV show, that's the log line as far as I'm concerned. Like James Gunn? Okay, well, he's got a show now. But no, I just feel like all these offerings, like, I've thought about, okay, if I had a Peacemaker trailer and then I had a Hawkeye trailer to watch, I'd be like, these look like fun shows. If I had a Batman trailer to watch and then a Spider-Man trailer to watch, or whenever there's a Doctor Strange trailer, I mean, I don't think that there's any reason that in my heart and head that these two companies have to be pitted against each other. It seems a little silly almost to frame it that way, really. So I don't know. That was something I noticed, was that like you could be equally as excited. You could think Black Adam looks cool and not know anything about it, and you could just same as people has been doing with the kind of Marvel stuff. So I don't know. I didn't know if you guys had any thought on that aspect of like, has DC kind of rehabbed itself by doing these slightly more independent projects that now they can kind of cut bait and just make whatever movie they want. They don't have to sequelize, or they're not committed to a 5-movie arc or any of that shit. They're just making, it seems like they're just making movies with teams that they want to work with.
DC feels boutique. I don't know how that happened. It's like the way that Apple is boutique, although it's like couple $billion company. There's something about the magic of like what it's doing with those smaller stories that aren't connected to, 5 or 6 other stories that really does make it feel like you're getting something outside of the norm when these movies come out, which is cool. I don't know. I like that. I like the trick of making things feel like that. Marvel feels so big now. Like it feels like you're battling Godzilla, or it's like this huge thing that's in it, and you're
not kidding. It is like with Marvel, it's more like what's going to be the thing that people are lukewarm about, or that you're going to move past, and we're going to get to all these things. But and even they just moved a bunch of movies back by a few months. I don't know if you guys saw that news that like everything got bumped back about maybe 4 or 5 months. Which makes sense. It was starting to seem like, what are they doing? Like if they actually were going to have a Doctor Strange movie in March after having a Spider-Man movie in December, which already seems crazy, given that we don't even have Eternals yet, and we're 6 weeks from a Spider-Man movie. But I don't know. I feel like it's all kind of settling into this rhythm where maybe Marvel needs to, slow down and differentiate as much as they can, and DC can just kind of keep on. Not that these movies have all been great. I just, you have like there's the Harley Quinn movie, and then you've got the Suicide Squad movie, and then you had Shazam. And then even though Wonder Woman 1984 didn't really do anything for that many people. In fact, it's a little odd, isn't it, that Wonder Woman didn't come up? Like we're almost a year past her last movie, and there's no real talk of plans or, so I mean, that goes to show you what 1984 kind of did to the, I don't know, the momentum, I think, of that character.
Right.
So, because right now they're just going with what works. And they have HBO Max now as a place where they could kind of do some of these, mid-level things, and maybe with a higher level of production value than they've done with like the Arrowverse shows on was it CW that runs?
Yeah, CW.
Yeah. So just interesting. I actually liked, I can't think if are we missing anything? Did they reveal footage from anything else that
Shazam 2, they showed some production stuff. There's a TV show called Naomi that's coming out on CW.
Yeah.
I saw something that's based on a character named Powerhouse. I mean, it was a lot, but that seems to be the highlights of that day. So it's pretty promising.
Well, Ronald, you want to talk a little bit about Dune Part
Sure.
1.
Sure. Part 1.
Oh,
Steve,
wait.
you haven't seen it yet, but they sneak that in.
They do, right at the
title
bottom.
Dune comes
Dune.
up, and very quickly a Part 1 comes up.
Yeah.
And boy, does it feel like a Part 1. I'll say
It
that
does.
when it gets to the end, it is a total like to be continued. See you next week kind of ending.
I mean, they may as well just say and come in, and then there's a guy just pulling it.
So it's that
Next
funny,
time
huh?
on Dune.
God, man.
But yeah, Denis Villeneuve, with this scope, with this scale, we knew he could do it with the visuals and the awesome sweep. But yeah, fantastic looking movie that I think does an okay job of like taking all this world building and setup that it has to do and make it feel integrated into a story. There's still maybe 6 or 7 minutes of just like people narrating that you don't know what their voice is, you know who they are, what they're, you kind of, context puts you in place pretty quickly as to whose voices you might be hearing. But there really is like a lot of narration, and a lot of like information gets fed to you right at the beginning. And I think, I don't know, I still don't know who this movie is for in a lot of ways, because I think Dune does kind of have a reputation for being sort of a high-minded bit of sci-fi. And I have this feeling that a lot of people think of Dune as like, I don't know, boring or over their head or just not interesting, or I tried to read that book once and it didn't hook me or whatever. And then to other people, it's this amazing classic. So it's weird that it's not like a mainstream. I don't know. Do you guys know what I mean? That this movie, as famous as it is, as big as it is, it doesn't feel like a mainstream idea. And so this movie's going to kind of live or die based on how well does it, as a self-contained thing, sell this story to a new audience. And like I said, I think it does an okay job of all that. I think of doing that and being an interesting movie. I mean, definitely the acting is great. Everybody looks great. There's some really cool scenery. But I found myself, as much as I was processing it for my own enjoyment, I was kind of constantly thinking like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of this movie? And I've looked at the critical response. I mean, there's pretty positive critical response. Audience response is pretty high. I think this is it's such an interesting thing. And the fact that it's kind of the first half of the thing really feels speculative, because they haven't even so much as shot one frame of Part 2 yet. Like it's not a movie, right, Steve? I mean,
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
As yet unannounced as a movie. Yeah. So
yeah.
What does it all mean, Ronald?
So, since sci-fi's creation in 2017, I've really been kind of a fan of Denis' work. Like, Arrival. Sicario's like one of the best told stories I've seen in a really long time. I remember watching that in the movies with you guys and being like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, The Prisoners.
Oh, okay. So let me give you context for this. So in the past month, I've watched the beginning of Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus's Foundation. I've watched about an hour and a half of Blade Runner 2049, and then I've watched Dune. I can honestly say that Dune might be one of the easiest to understand stories, despite it being as big as it is. Like, it is a huge undertaking. You feel like you're getting it. It's a little intimidating. And I think that's
but you're right. It's almost deceptive, because it's really not, it's not that different from the fantasy stuff that people have seen. And it's actually just as goofy as like most fantasy sci-fi movies you can think of. It's just presented with such seriousness that it might trick you into thinking that it's like heavier than it is, or more high-minded than it is.
That's the cool part about it. Yeah, it, like, I've watched bits and pieces of the Dune TV show, and I just remember how, oh God, I'm not trying to shit on, when I say this, I'm not trying to say that. It's a little wacky, right? This feels a lot more grounded, and in the world of the groundedness. And okay, so one of the things that drives me nuts is the idea of, like, when you watch a movie, you're like, I know what this is going to look like, what this is going to feel like before it even starts. Denis is doing something in this movie. There are things I've never seen in a film. There's things I've never seen in physical form that he's doing in this film that just, it reminds me of why I love movies. It reminds me of like this man took on something that's truly, I've heard this for like maybe 15 years at this point, an unmakeable movie. And if this is even a portion of what this story was, and I understand it's very easy to understand. It's very simple. The characters are really easy to understand. The motivations of the characters are very clear.
Well, it's inspired so many things that it almost feels familiar. You know what I mean? It's like you'll think about Star Wars and you'll think about other things that have definitely thrown back to this, and you'll go, oh yeah, and some things actually almost feel tired, like the Chosen One narrative and stuff like that. Yes, you're right. But I think that you're right but I mean, you seem to be agreeing with me on a certain level, which is like it's that Villeneuve like visual sweep, that ability to create scale and scope. What really makes this movie special is that part of it, because you've seen the corny version of this kind of story a million times. You haven't seen somebody sit back and try to make every shot like this weird, creepy, eerie work of art.
How was some of this stuff done? Like there are parts where you're looking at it and it's like, okay, this should look terrible in front of sand. This should look really bad in a dark cave.
It should get really old.
Yeah, this should look awful. Yeah. This is a gorgeous film with a story that I really enjoyed. I was expecting to be like, man, I'm going to be bored out of my pants. I enjoyed every frame of this movie. I did, man. And I didn't feel like
it doesn't feel long in the sense that maybe it feels like 2.5 hours, which it is, but it didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this movie is so dragged out. It just has a lot of that, like slowing down, like you said, when a ship emerges out of the water or out of the sky, you spend a little time watching it happen.
Yeah.
But it's usually like this, the size of it and the effect of it is usually so impressive that you don't mind kind of slowing down. And it's like the word grandeur comes to mind, that you don't mind slowing down and kind of absorbing the grandeur of what's happening a little bit. Like when the sandworm shows up, you spend a lot of time seeing it emerge from the sand, but it looks really cool. And again, like you said, Ronald, it looks like they thought about all these details. Like that seems like a part of the movie is that they took that stuff seriously.
I'm going to make a stupid, it's like the penis beside the remote thing. You need to see the scale of everything in order to understand why it works the way that it does. Like it really,
that's where you go.
No, it's the weird thing. Like
I would say it's like people standing by a giant shark jaw or something like that, so that they can show you, like how big the shark's jaw.
Or a penis beside a remote.
Next to a remote.
No, but there's like scenes where you see these flying objects and you see them land and you're like, okay, this is the scale of everything. This is how big the worm is in comparison to, the people,
the penis or the remote,
or the penis or the remote. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that happens. Like it's really the mission that this whole thing, like the whole idea of a civilization coming to another civilization and kind of trying to create a new rule that is like maybe not needed, maybe not wanted, trying to harvest something that the natives have already. It's like this really cool ideas that are done in ways that I honestly have seen, like you said, like I think you're right, man. I've seen in ways, but just not done in a way that feels as good as this feels, as looks as good, atmospheric. I blasted this movie, man. Like I should not have turned it up as loud as I did. I
thought about how I would watch this movie again. Like you would think watching a movie like this, and then like when it's available for everyone to watch, and I would watch it with my family this weekend. I would think like, okay, maybe I will watch it again. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just tell them they should watch it. But I was watching it the whole time going, no, I'm going to watch this again. Just like with Midnight Mass, when I put it on for my family, I didn't just like come in and out. I watched the whole thing with them again, because it's like you get a chance to kind of soak in it. But for this one, it really is the visuals. I mean, this is definitely, you talk a lot about putting on a movie to almost like test your system, Ronald. This movie feels like one that would be fun to put on for that purpose. I felt like the music was a little monotonous and a little of that Hans Zimmer, like on Hans Zimmer self-parody mode, but there's still a couple of cool themes. And there was one really strange element when the guy walked across with bagpipes. that was the first time it really, I mean, I've never read the book, but I've attempted it over the years, and I'm pretty well versed in the David Lynch version and everything. So I kind of know, but I had sort of forgotten that this is definitely stated as like the far-flung future, but these are humans. So the fact that a character has the last name Idaho, and the fact that there is like a guy with bagpipes, this is meant to be about 8,000 years from now, and what's happened with humankind's out in the universe. So like, those little details can be jarring. Like when you see palm trees that were clearly meant to look like Earth palm trees that are like a crazy exotic thing to have on this planet that they're on. Little things like that. I find it kind of interesting how it almost reminded me of like, some of the same imagery he was playing around with in Blade Runner 2049, with the kind of like ruins of Vegas in a desert type setting. The kind of, it reminded me of that, of like, there is something kind of far-flung and relatable about this sci-fi, that it is supposed to be humankind at some point in the far-flung future. I do think that makes things more interesting, but it also makes those little things that pop up that are a vestige of our time feel almost like little nods to put the viewer in, to remind you this is our world. This is meant to be, even though it doesn't look like our world, this is supposed to be our world. But the first time the bagpipes guy came out, I laughed, because I was like, what? Like, how did they not make that look like some kind of space bagpipes? It just looks like fucking bagpipes.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend it. It's a solid movie. And the thing is, like, the acting is solid. It just, I don't know, man. Like, check it out. I would really like to talk to you about it after you see it, Steve.
Yeah. Well, knowing what a Disney fan you are, I think this is going to be one of those movies we would have talked about no matter what. But like, it's such a thing. Like Dune,
turn it up loud.
Like people talking about it like it's unfilmable. It made it like a weird challenge on top of every other challenge you would have in a movie of this size.
He makes me feel nuts, man. Like, he makes me feel like it, because I heard the same thing about Blade. They're like, there could never be a sequel to Blade Runner. I don't understand how this is. He made it. There couldn't be a Dune. He made it, and it feels like. It didn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like this man might be a master. He's a master of his craft. I mean, we've kind of assessed that before, but this makes it abundantly clear to me. It doesn't matter how you feel about this movie so much. It's like he pulled off an this property was thrown around a million times. He took it and mastered it, and it's like, when's part 2 coming out? I can't fucking wait.
Yeah.
Everybody's in it too, as you know, Steve, and they're all, even the people that don't have great big roles are really solid. That's another thing that makes this feel a little different. It kind of similar to the way that you get, like, whenever you get good actors in the kind of fantasy, sci-fi, whatever Marvel movies we watch, how much it's the charm of the performers that really makes it work. In this case, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Timothée Chalamet. We mentioned Dave Bautista earlier. Jason Momoa has a lot of warmth and is playing a little bit of a more grounded guy than we've seen before from him, I think. So, and Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Harkonnen. That whole, I love the bad guys in this are so creepy. There's just something so wrong seeming about them, and I think that's Villeneuve. He's really he's doing it all in this one. So I think as a fan of his movies, at least, Steve, just the visuals alone you'll think are amazing. Whether the story hooks you or not, I guess, is what we'll determine.
We'll see.
Are you coming in cold? Like, are you a Dune guy from?
No.
Okay. So.
No. Not outside of, like, the biggest exposure is probably the doc that we've talked about on the podcast before.
Yeah. Right.
Nope. I'm more of I like Denny. I like the cast. I like the scope. I like the possibility of me being exposed to a story that's like a unknown thing that I just don't know. So I'm kind of open and excited for that, for sure.
Well, only one thing left to talk about, and that's Halloween Kills, the middle movie in the new David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy, which was supposed to come out last year and then got bumped back by a whole year because they wanted audiences to see it in the theater. And then they did a nice thing and put it on Peacock anyway. So I got to see it at home. How did you guys watch Halloween Kills? At home?
Home. Peacock.
Home. Yeah.
Well, somebody get it started. What did you think? We're going to do a little bit of a non-spoiler discussion, and then we're going to maybe go into the area of what actually happens in this thing. So we'll let you know when that line in the sand is. But as of now, we're doing, light to no spoilers. General thoughts.
I think it's important to mention, like you made the comment about like, it got pushed back like every movie did during COVID. And it was definitely a property that like they kind of knew based off the 2018 Halloween that they had like, probably a bona fide hit already, before it even got into production. So yeah, that's a reason that it did that. The fact that it's coming out on Peacock is like an also ran that just kind of got announced only a few weeks ago. To that point, it was always going to come out and be a theatrical thing. But it is important to note, we talked a little bit about this like a pod or two ago about like the impact of the Peacock release on its box office. And it's just important to note that even with the Peacock being available, and they don't really, I think they did release some numbers, but it's a little ambiguous in terms of the data that they provide. But even with the being available on demand, it still did over $50 million in its opening weekend in theaters, which is a massive hit. Like that's literally on par with, what a Bond movie did just a week ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
but are you surprised? This is this brand is for whatever reason, this brand has only grown in a weird way, in ways that the other slashers, I don't know if they have, but there's something iconic about Halloween, about Michael Myers. Why do we think that is? We just watched all the Freddy movies, Ronald. What is it that makes Michael Myers maybe scarier, maybe more contemporary for people? Is it just that it's so simple?
It's simple. I mean, this is, he keeps coming back. I think the fact that he keeps coming back stronger than ever, he'll beat you up, he'll kill you, he'll fight an essential worker, maybe 5 of them, maybe 10
7.
of them.
As long as they take turns, as long as they're kind enough to take turns.
Yeah.
Take out a bunch of firemen.
Yeah. He just has this appeal. I mean, the fact that his mask is just kind of a blank sort of stoic face. I mean, like it really is all of these things combined. The fact that you can kind of see him from a distance, he's a big man, and this mythology that they're kind of chasing in this new trilogy is really interesting. It's, for better or worse, it is shaking it up a little bit, like the whole franchise. And it's that's what I think it is. What do you guys think?
I mean, Steve? I think that it really kind of is like what most of these companies are trying to do now with their franchise IP, is that like they want to at least get you interested to see the movie. Like before you even discuss the quality of the movie, and we'll talk about our feelings on it. I think it's just that like they want people to be excited for a title, and it's not just any title. It's Halloween, which is like one of the most iconic horror franchises arguably ever. And even a character like Michael Myers is one of the most popular horror icons of all time. And I think, what you're getting at, Ronald, is a big part of it. And it's also just the fact that, he's one of the OG slashers, he's the babysitter killer. Like he's got this mythology around him that, the shape. Yeah. Like whatever you want to call him, for decades, he's been regularly in cinema, regularly at your VHS, whatever decade it might be, your digital media, whatever you're watching it on, like pretty much through the decades, there's been at least 1 or 2 Halloween movies that have come out, to varying degrees of success. But the most important thing is simply that like the reason they're so successful now is because of Jason Blum and Blumhouse, and the idea of how they approach making these movies. It allows them to be even more successful than most horror movies could ever dream to be in today's landscape, at cinema, at, on demand, whatever you want to measure it against. But, him kind of coming in and them revamping Halloween with David Gordon Green, Dan McBride, and Roughhouse, that their production company, it's just like a nice marriage of like an iconic thing. You got Jamie Lee Curtis, who's like the scream queen, the final girl. Well, arguably her and Sidney Prescott, but it's just like you have these things that just all mix together, and I think it's a property, it's a franchise that, you can look at the Rotten Tomato, the disparity between the critic score and the audience score, in the 40s versus the 80s or 90%. And you're just like, okay, well, that's telling you what a studio wants to see. The critics don't make or break a movie like this. It's the audience who have just completely bought in to a character, to a franchise, to a hero, to whoever it is that they're following through these movies. And Halloween is like one of the best examples of it in the horror community. And like I think you mentioned, John, on the last podcast, like the idea that with these three new films that there's more Halloween movies than there are really mostly any other horror franchise. I mean,
It's
you
like
mentioned
tied. I
Friday
think
the
I just did the math in my head. I think with this one, it's tied. And so
Right,
as of the
right.
next year, Halloween will have more sequels than Friday the 13th, which was always the ultimate. Now, I don't know how it stacks up against Puppet Master. They might still have everybody beat with like 50 movies or something like that.
Right.
But as far as the big ones, Halloween
Sure.
is now kind of like you said, it's the evergreen franchise out of the bunch that we usually talk about.
And the genius of it all is simply that, like, look what they're doing. Like in 2018, 2021, and 2022, these movies are all coming out the month of October. It's just the best possible way to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether it's in theaters, on demand, a combination of the two. I don't know what will happen with Halloween Ends, in terms of how they'll deliver that movie. But I mean, it'll be here next October. It'll be here next Halloween, and it'll open huge. And it doesn't matter what critics say. It's people want to see Michael Myers and Laurie Strode and see how this movie ends or this trilogy ends. And in 5-10 years, there'll be another Halloween movie or whatever it ends up being. And I mean, and again, I think the wild card of it all right now with the ones that we're going through is simply the marriage of like the way that Blumhouse and Jason Blum have managed to maximize profit margins or whatever the business side of things you want to say for the horror genre, because I mean, they are the wild card in it all. And I think that, any other studio that would have made this movie would have made it for way too much, and it wouldn't have been as successful as both of them have been. And yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, I have no doubt Halloween Ends will be huge. And, this one will probably go over 100 million in a few weeks. And the Peacock of it all. And I mean, Peacock is not a huge platform yet. And maybe it will never be. But, people did watch it I think I saw a figure of like 1.2 million households watched it, or subscribers watched it, which I don't know if that's good or bad on Peacock, but obviously it didn't really matter that much to the box office. But, people just want their Michael Myers, and they'll get it this year and next at least. So let's talk about the movie itself. I mean, at a simple, just non-spoilery conversation, what did you guys think of Halloween Kills?
I'll say this. I think, and you kind of alluded to this, Steve, with it being kind of a swing. These guys are Danny McBride is one of the co-writers. There's an attempt to they had an idea. You felt like they had an idea when they came back to do these movies. It wasn't just let's have Michael. I mean, and you can see there's lots of things that are the idea. Okay, let's erase all the sequels. Let's focus on Laurie Strode as this kind of broken person. This one definitely. Let's look at Haddonfield. I mean, if anything, I liked how much they broadened the scope of the characters we were going to see and all the characters that came into it. I think this is a weird movie, and I think that I enjoyed watching a weird movie that didn't feel like it was on the same tracks that one of these movies is normally on. And that means there's things that just flat out did not work for me, and some stuff that felt kind of corny or ham-fisted or like it was shoved in or like it wasn't working. And other moments that were just really great, funny, surprising, brutal, mean. I don't know. This movie was a fun watch for me. And it's like, I almost have to say, if I were gauging it based on how fun it was to sit down and watch, and how, we do this, Ronald, you'll know this, as you roll forward as a horror fan, there will come a time where you're hanging out with another horror fan and you'll say, I'm being silly. I know you know how it is to put on a movie with a friend, but you're a recent convert to the genre. But like, you put on a movie, not because you're like, yeah, you want to watch Friday the 13th Part 4 or something like that. Not because we think it's the greatest movie in the world, but because we both kind of know it's got a few cool kills in it. It's got some fun stuff to chat about. It's a little bit like you can say, what the fuck is that? And you can kind of get on with your life. Crispin Glover's in it, whatever. Different things about each movie has different little things to recommend it. And if I were going through that little mental Rolodex of like my slasher lexicon, I will say that, I mean, I don't rank moments from slasher films, but at this moment, I feel really warmly towards a couple of the scenes in this movie that make them feel like, oh, they would be the reason why when choosing a movie to watch, I would choose Halloween Kills, Big John and Little John. I love them. I
Great
wish the whole
scene.
movie was about them. I loved the group of people that gathered at the local bar, the karaoke bar that kind of spills out onto the street, and we kind of follow them through. I love this idea of survivors of the incident from 40 years ago kind of mingling
Yes.
with kids in a bar and then becoming friends and then I just feel like this movie had a real cool human sense of the scope of like the town, like who all would be involved. And even though I don't know if I quite satisfied my desire for this kind of story, and some of the commentary on like mob violence was a little preachy and a little ham-fisted, which I guess that's my new term, ham-fisted. But like I think that I like that it tried all that. I like that it went for those big moments. So yeah, I think this is a weird mess of a movie that I enjoyed watching, and I will probably watch again. I've already watched it twice. I'll probably watch it again.
Really?
So, well, I mean, I watched it once with some friends, and then I watched it with my wife and son because I knew that they would enjoy certain parts of it. But it was fun having seen it. It was fun witnessing other people react to some of the awful things that happened to people. The old couple with the drone like get killed in these brutal ways. I don't know. I just feel like the movie had lots of that kind of like, it felt like it really paid off that idea of why you get someone like Danny McBride to write a Halloween movie and why you get someone like David Gordon Green to direct it, is because it was just bursting with these little pops of humanity. Yeah, actors that I thought were pretty fun to watch. Again, I'm not even saying I thought it was that great. I just was thoroughly entertained by Halloween Kills.
I mean, I agree, man. Like there's a point where it feels like they're trying to establish in this middle one just how terrible he is. I think there was like before it seemed like, you know, the explanation of the roots of him getting out and attacking. This was like, you need to know how terrible he is and how brutal he is, and literally the volume of people that he kills and how quickly he can go from place to place. And how little the police don't really react to it. It's a lot of that, but God, it was fun. I had so much fun seeing some of those kills. Just like what, like, and it felt more brutal than any other one that I've ever seen. Honestly, like
he's never been, I don't think, maybe Halloween 2. I don't know. I haven't, I'm not as familiar with the trajectory. Maybe Halloween 4. This was, especially if you think about this as part of, okay, Halloween 1 happened and then Halloween 2018 happened. And then this is like Michael, like he gets out and he's like got a lot of killing saved up or something. He's just ready to, but he's just gonna kill you. Like if he comes in and there's 3 of you there, he's like, well, I got to kill 3 people before I leave this place. And he just kind of goes about it, you know? And I think that is what this version of the character was for me, is that he was just, it was as though that's his thing. It's like, well, I got to kill him.
Yeah. And the camera stays on it for so long. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Why
there was a lot of lingering on the suffering, which again made this movie feel mean, but it added to that, what you're talking about, Ronald, which is like, God, you do not want to encounter this guy. You don't want to think for a second that you could run away from him or you could fight back or anything.
They needed to establish that in this. I mean, sure, the first one was, I love the first one. I mean, truth be told, this one felt like, because they were trying to establish. I mean, honestly, the oddest scene to me, obviously the mob, but the bar scene with Tommy Doyle, it felt like an AA meeting that, like, it felt very weird. They were having a great time, and he's like, look, you know, let me tell you about something awful that happened.
I heard some people commenting on how that scene was edited oddly, that suggested to them that Anthony Michael Hall had a hard time getting the monologue out. And I didn't feel that. I felt like that was the movie's kind of editing style, was this almost like handheld documentary kind of style. So it was cutting around the room. But if you look at it that way, that they tried to cut together some form of a monologue with that, it would almost work. But no, did you guys get like a real strong MAGA vibe from Tommy Doyle?
It made me uncomfortable, man.
We were saying when they were chanting "Evil Dies Tonight," that "Evil Dies Tonight" would look good on a red ball cap.
It was strange.
But I mean, it felt like they were hinting at that without doing it. They were sort of saying, here's a guy who is a little bit of that guy. He's the red-blooded, you know, we're gonna get justice kind of guy. But I thought it was interesting seeing him, and you know, that character was played by the adult Tommy was already played by Paul Rudd in one of the previous Halloween sequels. So it was interesting seeing, like, now this role has been played by Paul Rudd and Anthony Michael Hall and whatever that kid was in the first movie. But yeah, I thought it was neat bringing those characters back, like the idea of who would be left from that moment, and the fact that they would all get together on Halloween. I don't know, there was something that felt kind of like that implies all these years of like support that these characters have shown for each other after this thing that happened, you know. And I still think it's kind of like Laurie in this new version of the movies. You really have to believe that 40 years later, she's still living that trauma so fully, and that these people are still doing the same thing about something that happened over one night that long ago. But I still think that the movie, it's this movie trying to deal with something you haven't seen these movies deal with already, which is the idea of this many years later, how would people remember this event? How would people talk about it? And the fact that everybody just fucking hates Michael Myers in this town, I thought was there's something kind of heartwarming about that, even though it doesn't necessarily, go great for everybody. But it's almost a little heartwarming to see how much people are mad at the bad man,
Yeah.
I feel like I wasn't a really big fan of the movie. I did find it, like you said, John, I could definitely see myself putting it on and watching it, and it's definitely entertaining. In terms of like just some of the kills and just like easily just even some moments where you see like the fall in Haddonfield and like just the music.
It's
like
the vibe.
That vibe just is fun to watch, regardless if I thought the movie was good or not. But I feel like some of the stuff you're describing like didn't really work for me, like this idea of expanding it to Haddonfield, but it doesn't seem like a town outside of that bar and that group of 4 or 5 people like having their, little like annual thing at the bar. Like the town really remembers what happened 40 years ago, like outside of Laurie and her family. Like if you think about the scope of what happened in 78, like you're talking about 3 people dying. And 40 years later, like all these other killings start happening, but you're only really like being reminded about this thing 40 years ago. But then it goes from that to like everybody wanting to just make a mob and hunt down anybody through the streets, to the hospital, like the whole hospital scene where they see there's another patient.
Well, yeah, maybe we could get into spoilers in a second here, because that part is a part that does not work. That just
right. I'm just saying the way that Haddonfield's brought into it, I think is a really great idea. And expanding beyond just Laurie and her family. Because I don't really know what the purpose of this movie is and what they're trying to do with the new Halloween story. Because I feel like at one moment, and even in the Halloween 2018, like there is a lot of discussion around people not really remembering what happened, 40 years ago. Like Laurie and her family do, like her granddaughter doesn't even know because it's been hidden from her, in that first movie. And she's learning about it, as we are basically. And I'm sure most of the town of Haddonfield, even some characters in this movie that we meet at the bar, they don't really know what's going on. They've heard some stories recently because of the killings that have happened over the course of the last 24 hours, I guess. But just the way in which it escalates is, in some ways I can believe it, because like shit just gets crazy these days for no reason at all, it seems. But I feel like, tonally, I think that's kind of where I got lost with this one, especially kind of from what they were doing in
like the mob at the hospital in particular. Because for me, I felt like that felt very, very cartoonish. It felt like a Simpsons episode or a South Park episode where suddenly you just have a mob that's just there shouting the same thing. It felt really cartoon. And then what you said about there's another inmate, and there's a whole storyline that, I guess I'll say it, even though I don't know if this is technically a spoiler or not, but there's a moment where a character says, we're the real monsters, or something like that, or it's turning us into monsters. And it was like such an on the nose lesson that like a few minutes before that, a person I was watching it with actually said, oh, it's one of those, the mob are the real monsters type stories, and then like within a few minutes a character said that, and it just felt like, why are they trying to wedge this into this movie? Because it didn't really have much place there. I don't know, it felt like it was like suddenly it was trying to take itself seriously in a way that didn't feel warranted to me.
Yeah, I just feel like that's the big problem with the movie, is that like I think without the Haddonfield, like the mob mentality, the hunting Michael down and evil dies tonight, like being chanted over and over again, and like bringing these legacy characters back to kind of be the face of this movie in essence. Because well, we'll talk more about it in a moment, but like these legacy characters that are brought back, Lindsay and Tommy and Marion, and other surprises that pop up for the movie. and ways in which they go extra steps to tie it even more so to Halloween 78 with flashbacks.
Mhm.
You know, those things happening are more of a distraction than I think anything really benefiting the story that they're trying to tell with this new series of Halloween movies. Because all it really does is, you know, kind of, I think, incorrectly or just not incorrectly, like inefficiently expanding the Halloween, you know, story or the lore around Haddonfield. For me, that just didn't work. And I feel like, especially, and I just want to note real quick, I didn't love the Halloween 2018 either. Like, I really liked it, and it's grown over time as I've rewatched it. But the one thing I will say about that movie, I feel like it had a perfect ending. And if that movie didn't have a sequel, I feel like that's a great bookend to Halloween 78. The idea of having 3 generations of Strode, you know, be involved in the proper killing of Michael Myers, like that's what it takes to kill this monster. And I think that was just so smart and creative. And immediately you're like, oh, they're doing a sequel. How are they going to undo that? And you know, and that's what this movie really is. And it's really just feels like this movie doesn't have much to do beyond letting Michael be as violent and aggressive and, you know, monstrous as he's ever been, to just get us to the next movie. Like, it's a bridge for me. Like, you talk about like how Dune ends and it's like part 1 and it's like, oh, that's just really just half of a movie. To me, this felt like just like, and that's why I feel like I'd even still put it on from time to time, because some of it I did find entertaining. Some of the kills were creative, like the playground scene, Big John, Little John. A lot of that stuff does work.
Those kids in the playground, when they talk about, there's a moment where some kids have seen Michael and the way they're talking about him, what they feel about this guy versus what we know about who he is.
Right. Sure.
There's some really great friction in that moment. You're right.
And some of that stuff really works well. And I feel like in a better movie for me, you know, with a better script that gives some of these, I mean, and that's really what bothers me, I think, the most is the script I don't think was very good. And I feel like, you know, you have Tommy Doyle being kind of like a lead character in this movie, where every third line he says is basically "evil dies tonight." And that kind of that grew to bother me as the movie went on, once I realized like where it was going and then the role he would play in the movie. Ultimately,
I feel like Laurie's role in this one too. Maybe we'll get.
I didn't want to talk about that part of it that much until the spoilers part, but
we shouldn't imply that she's in the movie.
Right.
But Ronald, any other general thoughts? Like, again, I'm saying very watchable, but a mixed bag. Steve might be a little bit more negative on it, but saying a similar thing. Ronald, what is your take on Halloween?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like both of you feel like it's not the best movie, but it is so rewatchable, and I think there's something to that. I mean, that once the third one comes out, it may be kind of just a bridging movie that, you know, if you have a block of 6 hours, you sit down and watch it with your friends or family or something like that, where, you know, it's the second one isn't without the first or the third one, you know, so like but I do think no movie should feel like that. I don't feel like you should go to a movie and it feels like, man, this feels like a bridge. But
I feel it less. See, I feel like slasher movies are so can be so disposable that to me that part doesn't ring. That doesn't seem as true to me as it seems to the two of you. Like that, this feels like a less complete movie. There's one big reason why this movie feels less complete, and I guess that'll be the first thing we talk about as we get into spoilers, which is now. So, folks, if you don't want to know or if you haven't seen, we'll see you next time. But otherwise, okay. So Laurie's sidelined in this movie, and I think that is like. I think it's a cool thing to be able to do a middle movie in this trilogy where Laurie is not the protagonist of the movie. However, I think the movie feels like it's setting up a confrontation that doesn't happen in this movie. And that's what makes it, to me, feel like that kind of incomplete thing. And it's so much so to say that we're all kind of saying that some of the weakest stuff was like the mob stuff at the hospital. Laurie may as well have just been in a coma for most of the movie. I mean, for all that she does in the movie. Maybe we just didn't need that hospital stuff so much. That what worked for me was the little vignettes around Haddonfield, different people reacting to Michael or news that Michael was back. And I think that stuff did work for me. So I don't know. I think that would be, I don't mind that Laurie was sidelined. I think that was kind of a cool experiment, but most of the hospital stuff and most of the stuff they did with Judy Greer's character, it felt like that was the stuff that was getting a little overbearing and not quite as earned. I thought the daughter came off great, like running around, doing what she was trying to do. But I don't know. I felt like the movie kind of wanted to be like, let's sincerely deal with the tragedy of what happened in the last movie. But I don't know that it was really set up to do that. And so there was a lot of time spent with those characters that really just felt like, oh, there's a slasher movie going on while these characters are kind of moping around.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I would have felt better if the prisoner didn't seem like he was kind of mentally disturbed.
Or if he
That
looked
was
anything
rough.
like Michael Myers' body type.
Yeah.
Right.
Stuff like that was just like, man, that's
So this
something
other
about-
inmate, we should say, is mistaken by the mob as Michael, and so badness happens, badness ensues. But he looks nothing like, he just
looks
doesn't seem
nothing
like
like
the
him.
guy who's been seen around town killing people.
But here's the thing.
But nobody knows. But I mean,
nobody knows
defend
what it
it,
looks like.
nobody knows what he looks like.
No, but
except
they showed
Karen.
They showed Michael Myers' face on the news next to that guy. It's just the camera went fuzzy, but everybody knows what Michael Myers looks like in this world. Like they show his face on the news. He's just a guy. They honestly want us to think that because no one really got a good look at the guy's face before he ran out, that they thought it might be him, because one person says Michael and then he runs. But I thought it was actually kind of clever the way they start to show, they cut to like the two people that lived, and they say there's this one guy, they're talking about the inmates that survived the wreck of Michael's transport in the first movie. And they show the guy who we're talking about, the little mentally ill guy who seems like he's in trouble. And then the shot cuts to the other person. They say, and they're saying Michael Myers, but it racks focus to the foreground. So you don't see Michael Myers' face. But yeah, he's just a guy. In their world, he's just, maybe he's got a droopy eye or something. He's just a guy. But that makes it even stranger that anyone would think this little stumpy guy, who I've heard people compare to Peter Pettigrew, like he just does not seem like Michael Myers at all. He's not the same guy that we've seen.
Did they establish in this movie that he has some supernatural situation going on? I mean, I thought after the last scene where he was just basically beaten to almost death.
Just Laurie has that voiceover about like,
Which is so weird.
Like he with the fear or something like growing that's like non-human or like not, you
with
can't
each
kill
kill
it, like
he transcends death or something.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But this movie does address head on that moment of like, what is Michael Myers supernatural? What happens when he dies? Can he die? This movie seems to like go right through that and not really address it, but we definitely see him essentially not die when he should have died, right? Like that's what that was. Him standing up at the end is like a confirmation of some kind of power or some kind of force.
Yeah.
I mean, is that what you guys take from that? Because I honestly thought there was no other way to read that except that you can't kill him. Like, no, don't worry, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we make? What the fuck? What do we make of that? Like, does that? Are we back in Cult of Thorn territory, Steve? Are you flashing back to Halloween 6?
No. Oh man, I don't know, man. That's kind of what makes me feel like it's a little bit of a mess, because I mean, especially because like in watching a lot of the press for this and like podcasts that I listen to that he's been on, David Gordon Green, the idea for this movie is that it ends, right? And like Halloween ends, like picks up years after this. There's like a time jump, the idea that it's not the night after, that it's like this was to Halloween, that there's like time between it. And so, seeing Laurie where she's at in the hospital, talking to the Officer Hawkins and, basically just kind of telling us about Michael and him kind of like ascending beyond, mere mortal existence. Like it's a weird way to end the movie, especially like where you think about like geographically that last shot and what happens in the last moments and what you see happening in the moments prior to Karen going back into the house. It's like, so what happens after what happens after this that takes us years into the future? Like if you think about Halloween, like, the way they've handled even movies that aren't canon for this series, it's like they usually always end with like a, he's dead, or like they think he's dead, or like, because people can move on with their lives.
Yeah.
But I guess there's something to be said for like the idea that like the boogeyman just really just disappears, or like he's gone, you know. But I don't know. It's something
I have to admit, I like the idea. I like the idea of not knowing what's up with him. You know what I mean? I like the idea of when we pick up in the next world the next movie, it's in a world where maybe Michael Myers has disappeared for a year, you know. I like that idea. I don't know what story supports that or what he's been doing or how this new grounded version of Michael. It's not that he's grounded; he's pretty supernatural. So it's like I like that idea because they've done that in the past before, where like he was just missing. You know, they pick up the next movie and he's missing.
Right.
I think that's neat. I think, but I agree with you that it doesn't feel as much like the people in the world of the movie have like a status quo change. Like it's almost like we had a false ending. The ending was when they seem to have him killed in the street and Judy Greer walks away. And then like the what ending was her getting killed. And then that's kind of where it ends. Like that's actually the end, you know, is like to say that and to confirm that that whole thing of why he was staring in that window all this time was that he was looking at his own reflection. You know, I mean, little moments like that are kind of interesting, I thought, like psychologically. I think they do a good job of trying to get into Michael's psychology without doing the Rob Zombie version of that. Like they're getting into like, well, this guy has a memory of Michael Myers as a kid and we can have that resonate through the movie. I thought that was actually kind of neat. But yeah, you're right that as far as like what was the story of this movie, it's like, well, it didn't quite commit fully to doing the Tommy Doyle as the main character thing. And it seemed like Laurie was around just for them to reiterate 50 times that it's not about you, you know, which I think is a cool note. I think it is cool for Laurie to come to terms with the notion that maybe Michael Myers doesn't remember you and doesn't know who the fuck you are. And he came back to your house because someone kind of set him on a path to that house, you know? I like that idea. I don't know if this movie's saying that's true. It's kind of like you know how in the Star Wars sequel trilogy there was the whole thing about who Rey's parents were and it was like kicked back and forth. It's like, well, Rian Johnson says they were nobodies, well, JJ Abrams says that she's a Palpatine. Like there's something about, is Laurie the focus of this? That is maybe in the next movie we'll find out that Michael does care, but it was feeling like this movie was there to sort of answer the question people had in the last one in 2018 of like, wait a minute, is Michael really obsessed with Laurie, or are people just putting him on the path to Laurie and then she's obsessed with him, you know? But I don't know that the movies have really grappled with that fully. Like I think there's still an interesting story that they haven't told of like what happens when Laurie almost like, you know, tips the scale. Like I really thought the first Halloween when it came out, I thought we were going to see like, oh, unhinged Laurie is going to see Michael everywhere and start killing people or something like that. Like I thought it was going to be some crazy new wrinkle like that, but instead it was no, unhinged Laurie has been hiding out in this compound for 30 years and planning something that didn't really go that well. As we find out.
He got on the injury reserve list pretty quickly, man. I was like, what? So she's not gonna fight him at all? Like he's not gonna come to the hospital and try to kill her or anything? She's just like, oh, go on without me. All right, I guess. I don't know. That was a weird choice.
So what did you think of bringing back these survivors just to kind of pick them off? Well, actually one of them stuck around, so we'd still have Lindsay, but Tommy died and the nurse died and Lonnie died. Lonnie, who's still in my favorite scene in the first Halloween is Loomis hiding in the bushes, and Lonnie's the kid he scares away, right? He's like, I thought that was funny, but I thought that was cool. And Robert Longstreet, I'm big on him right now. I thought he brought there was a real humanity to that moment when he kind of says goodbye to the kids in the car, knowing probably he's going to die, but trying to act like he thinks they might. That was, you know, good actors do something with these characters in this movie. But most of those moments, as you mentioned, Steve, most of the moments I'm talking about that I loved, they're all on the margin moments that have to do with a little bit of a good characterization and a good performance. It's not because this movie is really building towards any big thing. I guess the mob fight, I guess seeing people take Michael Myers on is the whole point of it. But that kind of is a wet fart because they succeed and then he kills them all anyway. You know, it's almost like it doesn't want to commit to an idea of what Michael is.
I feel like that's a good example. Like Lonnie's death, like, you know, you see all this like flashback of like Lonnie of like interacting with Michael and like Michael leaving him alone and like, you know, what impact that's had on him. And
what if Michael left him alone again and then killed his kid? You know, that would have been something.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like the fact that he goes in the house and that's all you see of him. And then you see him hanging out of an attic door. You know, it's like I just wish that it was more of like, you know, for all the time spent with these kills, like that there would have been more of a build to that character's death. You know what I mean? Like
I agree that character needed more.
Right. And I mean, like, because you do see a lot of that character in the movie, and like he's pretty good in the movie. Actually, he's great actually in certain scenes. And even like you said, like with his kid, like his kid gets like brutally killed. And like they spend so much time on that, but like the character that you've seen for the better part of this movie, who's kind of like Tommy's like second guy, in terms of like the leads coming back, it's him and Tommy. It's like it just doesn't. And like, yeah, and Nurse Marion, like the stuff in the car and like just some of that stuff was so stupid to me. Like it just was so silly, like her death. And like
I think they were trying to show how people kind of fall apart when they're in a stressful moment.
I agree.
But that's what I'm saying about,
I get it.
It felt a little wrong to bring back these like iconic characters to do that to them. If these had just been random schmoes, it's fine to have them die in these goofy ways. But it felt a little bit like, why did you bring back this team of survivors just to, again, it was part of the meanness that I think helped the characterization of Michael, but it did feel like a wasted opportunity to like, in the end, kind of what you're saying, Steve, why? There's a big why this movie.
Yeah. Like why them? I don't know.
Right.
I did like Lindsay. I did like her like confronting Michael and like holding her own and like being able to escape him. Yeah, like know what to do to get away from him. Like, like her running and like going between these trees, and even though he's kind of just pacing and hiding. And I did like that. I mean, like that's kind of like that's a good reason to have that character come back, because like she has a knowledge of the character, what, and that's kind of something I keep hitting on, is that like I don't know that I got that from the movie, like that people know who Michael Myers is. Like I feel like, if to me, my feeling was, especially from the 18 film, it's like I don't feel like people remember Michael Myers. And I feel like, the podcast team that went and sought him out at the mental hospital is like what we talked about before, where it's like these people digging into something that a lot of people don't even know about. And and I think perspective is everything. And because like, here in 2021 or 2020 or whenever this is happening, somebody killing 3 people 40 years ago is a blip on the radar for like
it just
the
doesn't
crazy
track.
shit
That part of it just doesn't track, and they try to comment on that, but I think that's one of the biggest hurdles of that approach. I understand that it cleans up the timeline so they can make the movies they want to make, but as far as like what that does to our logical understanding of how the world works, it doesn't seem like it. Even makes Laurie feel a little weird that she's still so obsessed with what happened when it was just one night, like, not that she didn't go through some shit. She went through some shit, but people survive that kind of stuff in the real world that build lives. And I'm just saying it makes the decision to make her kind of a broken person feels like a real choice. You don't have to play her broken. But that clearly is the concept behind this trilogy. So,
and I guess that's what I'm saying about the legacy people coming back in, is that like, Laurie is the extreme, but these are also characters that experienced that moment in time 40 years ago that could still be impacted by it, and that obviously are choosing to every year get together and have a drink and here's one for Laurie or whatever. Like, there's something that it still matters a lot to them. So like I feel like those characters would be the ones banging the drum in ways other than just the mob mentality way that the movie goes. It's like, these would be the characters that have an understanding more than anybody, who Michael Myers was and possibly still is, so for like the nurse and, even kind of how Tommy's approach was, and Lonnie, I think Lindsay's really the only one that gets a moment, that kind of shows like why you would have a legacy character around, like her telling the kids, where is he? Like, no, run, keep running, don't stop. Like,
those kids are great when they say that guy's been so playing good. Hide and seek with us, and he's been there he
all
is
night. And it's so good.
That
works.
That's so great. And they're like, what are we, 3 years old? The kids are just being such kids about it.
Man,
so what do you guys, go ahead, Ronald.
I was just going to say the nurse that was dressed up like a doctor and a doctor was dressed up like a nurse. And then the gun death that happened with her. I'm like, I understand that stuff like that happens on occasion. That felt like so cartoony. Like it felt like,
See, like, I think they like to throw in one of those "you did it to yourself" deaths every now and then in these movies. But I think they also, because earlier they have the cop getting killed by the other cop, and Michael's like, "Yeah, this is as good as any other way to kill somebody," and just drops the body and splits. And I think I felt the same way about him him kicking the car door of like, it was a little silly, but it was also sort of like you sense him kind of going, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hey man, hey, you're dead. You're dead. I don't have to do it with my hands for it to count. There's other people to kill around here. So I liked it for that reason, but I also do think like that car full of characters that I was really starting to get into was like, oh no, they're essentially just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And again, you need that in these movies. The body count was very high. I sort of appreciate that, but it does seem like, you weren't really trying to develop these characters. And that's kind of what we're talking about, Steve, I guess, with the legacy part of it is like, did you bring him back just to make a point? Like Tommy at least exists to kind of make a point about mob mentality, mob violence. And I don't know, he's probably anti-vax too, but they don't get into that in the movie. But like I do think Anthony Michael Hall looks pretty good tossing that baseball bat around, like and talk. I bought that guy. I bought that local guy, the kind of towny guy who's got like who would like help you. He'd probably come help you out if you needed it too. He seemed like a solid guy, but he also seems a little bit self-serious, and maybe he was kind of playing himself a little. Yes, damaged, very very much so. But I loved I have to say the scene where he goes to the hospital. One of my favorite Laurie moments is him talking to her. And when she's like, Tommy, and she tells him what to do, and he's like, okay, Laurie. And I was like, oh, I love that. This little dynamic that shows you, she was his babysitter. She's always been like however years older than him. So he probably still thinks of her that way as like, sure, anything for you, Laurie,
Yeah, definitely.
That was cool. But yeah, I felt like the movie maybe needed a little bit more of that if it was going to have so much Laurie in it. Just her basically having the same conversation over and over again with different people. So what do you think of the decision to kill Karen? I guess that's the last thing we should talk about. The movie ends with sort of surprise murder of the Judy Greer character, who was kind of shaping up to be the lead, the second lead after Tommy, maybe, of this one. What did you guys think of that? Was it just a shock, or do you think it kind of clears the way for like, we're going to pick up with 4 years later, what the relationship between Allison and her grandmother is, and maybe they're closer, maybe they're not. What do you think killing Karen does for this trilogy?
I think it definitely sets up Allison and her grandmother brutalizing Michael Myers. Like there's like, it feels like that felt like the Kill Bill death, like the beginning of the movie, where the catalyst for the bride coming back. Like it was that fucked up of a death. I'm like, he's got to go. Like before, I'm like, let him walk around. After that death, I'm like, he's got to go. They gotta kill the shit out of him at this point. But it's probably not going to happen in that way. And one of them is going to die. I don't think it's going to be Allison. I think it's going to be a grandmother.
That's the only way it can end.
Yeah. So,
or maybe should end. I don't know. I think that it's a bummer to see Judy Greer go, because like I genuinely like her and most things that she's in, and she's pretty beloved. But I think. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I guess it kind of works for maybe what their plan is for Halloween Ends, in terms of taking Laurie off the board for this whole movie and kind of Karen kind of running the show for the most part with Tommy.
Yeah.
And even Karen kind of being the one that orchestrates the closest they get to killing Michael in this movie and saving her daughter and all this good stuff. She really is kind of like the hero of this movie. That Michael gets the upper hand on in a kind of a weird scene. Like it's like a random, like, look at the window, see a kid in a costume, and then go up and Michael's somehow there. But I guess it works. I mean, again, I got to assume where they're going with this last movie. I like taking one of the heroes off the board, even, though I like her a lot, especially, when I mentioned the whole idea of like 3 generations of Strode women like kind of being responsible for taking him down, which would have absolutely almost worked had essential personnel not intervened. But I think that it's a sad thing to see her get killed, especially this poor girl has lost now both of her parents. And I don't know. I mean, it's going to only kind of it only kind of serves to motivate Laurie even more once you see her find out, or we won't see her find out. We'll kind of see them dealing with it after the fact, obviously.
I know, and that's a weird thing about it being a time jump, is that we won't see them discover it.
Yeah. So Rest in
But I
peace,
do like
Karen.
that Halloween is when he comes around. I do like the idea that whatever it is, it's at least a year before he comes out and kills again. You know,
Sure.
like, I do think that I can't remember in the movies. There was like an old man who found Michael in the woods and nursed him back to health, and he was living in his cabin for a year. Wasn't that
Yeah.
something that happened?
Yeah, that's the guy that totally. In when he like survives down when he's like down the river.
Yeah.
In,
Like
in
fished him out
Halloween,
of the
I
river.
think it's Halloween
Yeah.
5. Yeah, this movie starts off with him pulling out of the river, and he like saves him, nurses him back to life.
At any rate, I do think this movie has problems, and I think that like whatever it does, it still has got us queued up for whatever that next story is. It almost feels like it's going to be a disconnected story from this. You know,
Right.
This was much more of a 1-2 punch. But like I said, I think that Karen getting so much to do in this movie and then getting killed is a little bit like the coolness of bringing back the survivors, just to kind of treat them like any other character in a movie like this. So it's like, to me, I agree with you, Steve, that like there aren't characters that should necessarily be sacred in a story like this. And I would have, like, for instance, with Lonnie, which, by the way, I'm remembering now the line from the first Halloween. It's when Loomis is watching the Myers house in the bushes and Lonnie comes up and like, it's like you can see the kids are daring each other to go up on the porch of the Myers house, and then Loomis just says, I think he says, "Lonnie, get your ass away from there."
Yeah.
And he says it like in a creepy voice, and the kid runs, but it's like, I always like that moment because it really seems like Loomis is honestly just having fun, like scaring
definitely.
these kids. Like for a split second, he kind of seems kind of pleased with himself. But I do think that, that being Lonnie, I think if I had any, like, I think this movie tried to do an interesting thing of like who gets killed on camera, who gets killed off camera, and that rhythm you were talking about, Steve. Like Lonnie's death felt like it should have been an on-camera death, and it wasn't. I think that giving Karen this like they really linger on it. She gets stabbed a bunch. We really see like, oh wow, and then it ends on Michael essentially. So I do think that saving that kind of brutal character you love moment for this ending did feel like they were trying to go out on a big punch. And I don't think it's an ill-considered one, because I do think setting like Allison and Laurie's relationship without Karen in between, it does sound like fertile ground to go to. So I think if I have any negative feelings about it, it's really just she's another good character like Lonnie, like whoever that they killed in this, but at least she died in a significant way. I think it's really what we're saying is it's sad for any franchise to lose Judy Greer if they can help it. You kind of Judy Greer is like a great ingredient for a movie to have in it. So
For sure.
But yeah, you kind of needed something. I agree with you, Steve. Like you taking a character off the board feels like an act of true storytelling or confidence or something for a movie like this. Did you notice that her sweater, she was wearing like a Christmas sweater. Do you notice that it got more Christmassy as the movie went along? Like actually more snowflakes and trees were appearing on it. No, I'm just kidding. It's just that every time I saw her, I was like, God, that is a fucking Christmas. That sweater is Christmassy as hell. It just seemed more and more so. And I kept wondering, like, was there a context to her grabbing that sweater and putting it on? I can't remember at what point she decided she was wearing a Christmas sweater.
She's ready to get Halloween over with. That's what it was. She's like,
she's one of those ladies. She's like ready to change out the decorations.
It's like, get this out of here.
All right. Well, Halloween Kills.
And all that said, I can't wait to see Halloween Ends.
I know. I'm excited to see, because it sounds like they have an idea for that one too.
That's
like,
it.
In the back.
That's it.
Like,
and that's what they want from these movies. And that's what I'm saying. Like, regardless where you fall, it's like the best thing that they can do for these movies is still just at least make them interesting enough that you want to see what's next. And that's absolutely where I'm at. So yeah, this time next year, we'll be talking about Halloween Ends, and hopefully overall it's a more positive conversation. I'll watch this movie again, no doubt. I just was a little let down by it. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's enough. We went on plenty about Halloween Kills. Again, it's in theaters now and also on Peacock if you have that streaming subscription. Did you guys have anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Not I.
Oh.
Good deal. Moviesmovie.com is the website. You can find all of the episodes there if you want to listen right on the site, or jump over to your favorite podcast platform from there with a link to pretty much everywhere we are available. YouTube.com/movie schmovie, same for Instagram, Facebook, all the socials the same /movie schmovie. But on the YouTube, you can subscribe, see the video element that we shoot every week when we do the audio. Pick your poison in terms of how you prefer to watch the podcast. But if you do subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or any podcast platform. If you can leave a review or some sort of rating, if it's available, a thumbs up, anything like that, we'd appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. Maybe, I don't know, maybe talk a little more about Dune. Hopefully I'll check it out.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll come up with something fun and exciting as
Yes.
always. And speaking of, as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Get your ass away from there, Lonnie.